The sheriff told me I was trespassing on my own land. At first, I actually thought it was a joke. Because I had lived there for 21 years. I had built everything on that land with my own hands. The cattle gate, the fencing, the solar setup, even the dirt driveway that led up to my house, it all existed because I worked for it, not because someone granted me permission. So hearing those words from a sheriff didn't feel real. But he didn't smile. And neither did the woman standing behind him. Heather, the HOA president. She wasn't confused. She wasn't asking questions. She looked completely certain, like this wasn't something she was trying to figure out, it was something she already believed was settled. That's when she spoke. Calm voice. Controlled tone. No hesitation. She said my property was inside HOA jurisdiction. That my structures violated community standards. That I was refusing compliance with regulations I had never even seen before. I remember just staring at her for a moment, trying to process how she could sound so sure about something that didn't match my reality at all. Because in every document I had ever signed, every record I had ever checked, every map I had ever seen, this land was mine. Not partially. Not shared. Mine. So I told them the truth as simply as I could. This is private land. It has been in my family for decades. But the sheriff didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked down at his papers. And that pause said more than anything he could have spoken. Because in that moment, I understood something important. He wasn't judging what was true. He was reading what was written. And written things can be wrong. The next morning didn't bring clarity. It brought pressure. The first envelope arrived early. Then another. Then more. Violation notices. Not for new construction. Not for recent changes. But for things that had existed on my property for years without a single complaint. My cattle gate, violation. My solar panels, violation. My driveway access, violation. Even the placement of my truck near my own house was suddenly being documented as non-compliant. But what made it worse wasn't the volume. It was the consistency. Every single notice pointed to the same boundary line. A boundary line I had never seen in my life. That's when it stopped feeling like confusion. And started feeling like something structured. Something organized. Like someone had decided this outcome long before I ever knew I was part of it. I went straight to the county records office. Not to argue. Not to complain. But because when something this wrong shows up in the real world, there is only one place that can confirm it. The truth is supposed to live in records. The building was quiet when I walked in. Old desks. Filing cabinets. The low hum of machines that felt like they had been running for decades. The clerk asked for my parcel number. Typed it in. Waited. Then paused. That pause didn't feel normal. People who work with land records don't usually hesitate. But she did. She looked at the screen. Then at me. Then back at the screen again. And finally, she turned it slightly so I could see it. What I saw wasn't just unexpected. It didn't match anything I believed was possible. She said quietly, "This is the map they've been using," and in that moment, I realized something far bigger than a simple mistake was sitting in front of me. Something had been defining my land, without ever legally existing. And that was the moment everything started to shift. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just kept looking at the screen. Because what I was seeing didn't feel like an error. It felt like something had been quietly operating for years, without anyone ever questioning it. The clerk leaned a little closer and said it again, slower this time, like she wanted to make sure I understood. This map is not part of the official land registry. That line hit differently. Because in land records, there are two things that matter most, what is legally recorded, and what is not. And this wasn't. But according to everything the HOA had been doing, it might as well have been law. She scrolled further down the system. And that's when I saw it. My property boundary. Except it wasn't my boundary. It was a modified version. Shifted. Redrawn. Reclassified. And labeled in a way that made no legal sense. It looked official. But it wasn't. And that's when the real realization started forming in my mind. Someone hadn't just misunderstood my land. They had been operating on a completely different version of reality. A version I had never agreed to. A version that technically didn't exist in law. I asked the clerk one simple question. Who created this map? She shook her head immediately. That's the problem. It's from a developer planning file. It was never submitted for legal approval. I remember repeating that in my mind. Never approved. Never recorded. Never valid. But still being used. For years. And suddenly, everything started connecting. The violations. The boundary claims. The confidence in Heather's voice. It wasn't random authority. It was belief built on incorrect data. I left the office without saying much. Because the worst part wasn't anger. It was clarity. Now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. And it wasn't just one person making mistakes. It was an entire system operating on a false foundation. But I still needed proof that would hold up in the real world. Not assumptions. Not opinions. Something undeniable. Something physical. So I made a decision. I called a certified land surveyor. 2 days later, everything changed again. Bright orange flags started appearing across the neighborhood. One by one. Measured. Placed. Verified. The walking trail. The so-called community zones. Even areas people casually treated like HOA property for years. All of it was being marked based on actual legal coordinates. Not assumptions. Not old developer sketches. But verified county records. And that's when the first real reaction came. Not confusion. Not discussion. Panic. Heather showed up the same day the markers reached the main access path. She didn't walk slowly. She came fast. Direct. Controlled rage barely hidden behind her voice. What is this? Who authorized this? But the surveyor didn't even look up fully. He just checked his equipment and said one line, "This is boundary verification based on legal parcel records." That sentence changed the entire atmosphere. Because it removed opinion from the situation. And replaced it with fact. People started gathering. Neighbors. Residents. Curious voices turning into concerned ones. Because for the first time, they were seeing something physical that contradicted what they had been told for years. And that's when I realized something important. Truth doesn't need force. It only needs visibility. Heather tried to regain control. She started questioning procedures. Demanding documents. Trying to challenge the survey in real time. But every move she made only created more records. More documentation. More evidence being built against her position. And she didn't seem to realize it yet. That night, my lawyer called me. And the first thing she said was different from everything I expected. Not hesitation. Not uncertainty. Just clarity. "Cole, this isn't a misunderstanding anymore." She paused. Then added, "This is unauthorized control based on invalid land documentation." And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to stay a neighborhood dispute for long anymore.